Okay, awesome. So I think we should just wait like maybe 2 more minutes for people to trickle in before we get started. But thank you to everyone who's already here. I'm really excited for our panel today. Oh, oops. Okay, awesome. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, hello to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the Ada Lovelace Academia panel. It is our last final panel of our series. My name is Daria Shafrina, and I'm an undergraduate research student at the Human-Computer Integration Lab, and I will be moderating today's panel. Without further ado, oops. So for our academia panel today, we are joined by Professor Yi-Luen and Professor Marshini Chetty. As for our format for the last 3 days, our panelists will first give 10-minute presentations on their work and experience, and then we'll end the day with a discussion and a Q&A panel moderated by myself. If you have any questions for our wonderful panelists, please put them in the YouTube and Zoom chats, and we will get to them once our discussion kicks off. None of this will be possible without our organizing team, Jasmine, Yuji, Jazz, Zoe, and Pedro. We met over the last couple of months to put this together, and we're really excited to present it to you. And definitely not possible without our volunteers, Alex, Shanyuan, Romain, and Svetlana. They'll be in the Zoom and the YouTube chats to help this run smoothly. And last but not least, our amazing sponsors, the Department of Computer Science, the Physical Sciences Division, and the Center for Data and Computing at the University of Chicago. So let's get started. Our first panelist presenting today will be Professor Do, and I have a video to share on her behalf. So let us go ahead and get started. I'm going to mute myself so you'll be able to hear the video better.
I'll start from the beginning.
Yep, I'm going there. All right, awesome.
Hi, let me share my story. Academic journey. I have a master's degree from Harvard Graduate School of Design and a Ph.D. from Georgia Tech. My first tenure track position was at the University of Washington in Seattle. I got my tenure there, become associate professor, and then Carnegie Mellon recruited me. I joined CMU, and later I joined Georgia Tech. 2013, I was on leave from Georgia Tech to direct an international research center called the Q Center in Singapore. Returned to Georgia Tech in 2016 and joined Atlas Institute at CU Boulder in 2017. My research has been on sketching. I was interested in how architect sketches and can we build computational tool to support that. I worked on a project called the Electronic Cocktail Napkin. The idea is for computer to recognize your freehand sketching, such as triangles, a circle, and for example, you can build out complicated symbol like a circle on top of a cross is female, or triangle on top of a box is a house. My Ph.D. dissertation is called The Right Tool at the Right Time, Freehand Sketching as the Interface to Knowledge-Based Design Systems. For example, if I sketch the isometric view, I can turn that into a 3D model. I can draw floor plan to run simulation, or I can draw the diagram, and the Great Buildings Collection slide library can show me the Parthenon picture looks like what I draw. I also worked on from 2D to 3D, VR, virtual reality sketchpad. Here you can see the drawing out the floor plan with wall and columns, and maybe also furniture layout, such as having a lamp and couch and dining tables and a TV. I can turn that into a virtual environment. Once you're in the virtual environment, you also want to sketch in 3D. You want to add another partition, or maybe annotating that this window is the wrong place, we should move it. So I talk about sketching in 2D and 3D. Let me transition into 4D, which I mean sketching with objects, which means tangible, embedded, and embodied interactions. For example, navigational blocks have who, what, when, where, different blocks. So you're rotating who could be founding father or the miner, what could be the gold rush, and when could be 1890, and where could be the Pioneer Square. So in a tourism kiosk, you can play with the block to retrieve different stories. Posy is a construction kit that you can put things together, maybe making the molecule model, or making a puppet show and animating this dinosaur. I also work on sketching for embodied interactions. The Mobile Music Touch project was about teaching people to learn to play piano with a glove. And so one of the hardest things is to learn the fingering. And the idea is your glove can teach you
how to play a piano melody without you paying attention to it.
Created by some students and professors at Georgia Tech, the glove uses vibrations to teach your fingers the notes of a song.
So that was about teaching you to play piano, haptic passive learning. And this project, Voxtail, is a virtual cocktail about multimodal interaction with taste, smell, and color sensations.
It can be controlled from your mobile through Bluetooth. Flavor sensations can be customized depending on your preference. The visual simulation gives users a certain expectation of flavor. The electric taste is enabled by a control current which simulates sour, bitter, and salty tastes. The aroma is released when users drink to give them a full flavor experience.
That was a lot of fun. So now let me transition to creative technology and design. I joined Atlas Institute. I direct the Acme Lab. Acme for creative machine environment. We have lots of cool projects. Let me show you a couple. This is Mecha Magnets. And the idea is that you can design any gadgets. 3D printed. And with arrangement of magnets, you can create different haptic feedback and functional input, such as a switch. We also use that to build a game, and this is called Hot Swap. We went to GDC and won an alternative control game prize. GDC is 4,000 people. Hot Swap, all hands on deck. You have to collaborate with your partner. You control different part of the ship. So you can change the speed of the ship or changing the direction. Loading a cannon, 1, 2, 3. Fire. Well, it got fired by an enemy and you have to put out the fire. Let's play. So there are 4 input locations, and you and your partner have to collaborate and switch and swap. It's a lot of fun. Well, here, change gear. This one is called Sensing Kirigami. And this is carbon-coated paper as a lampshade. So you can pull one side to dim the light and pull the other side to make it brighter. So this is an elegant way to have an interface with just paper, and you can interact. Okay, here's another one with paper, but this time it's about markers printed on pop-up. So you can create a buttons that pop up and having the camera recognizing the marker. Here's a button. CV is computer vision. This is what computers see.
Company C sold 30 apples. Company B sold 1.3 times the amount of apples as Company C.
Right. And then let me share the conferences that I go. I was on steering committee on both TEI and CNC. This is the introduction for the TEI conference.
A thing that's very nice is that it's small, and there are lots of different approaches from design, from engineering. What is the tinkering? Can we make something happen? Can we have the playful spirit that makes things happen? And I think you can see from this conference why everybody's like smiling all the time, because you see surprises.
Life is short. We can't waste any more time in just virtual pixels. So we have to hurry. We have to really embody all our visions and the concepts and society.
Lots of surprises and magic. Everybody's creating magic.
And as a result, the most important part of this conference was not the conference, not the papers.
Technical conferences are sort of about what is. TEI is more about what is coming.
The same person who might give a dull paper gave an exciting demo, because that's where, you started smiling and you started being a person and started showing your excitement about the stuff that you were doing.
It's this wonderful combination of kind of hackers, tinkerers, designers, artists, and technologist engineers. So it's a great event to come to.
TEI next year will be in Salzburg, Austria. It will be virtual though. The Graduate Student Consortium paper deadline is today. If you have some time, you can put something in by midnight. The next conference is CNC, Creativity and Cognition. It will be in Venice, Italy next year. Paper deadline is February. I hope to see you there. On that note, this is my last slide. You can find me at the Atlas Institute at CU Boulder. My email is ellen.do@colorado.edu. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful work with us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that Professor Chetty can share hers. Oops, I'm going to stop. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I will share my screen. And this is incredibly unfair that I get to go after Ellen. I'm like, now how am I going to top that? But I will try with my, can you see my screen? Oops, I am on the wrong side. Let me see. Okay, right. Yes. Okay, awesome. Okay, so yes, it's very hard following up after Ellen after all those amazing videos, but I will try. So today I'm here to introduce myself. So I'm basically working on making the internet more trustworthy and inclusive. And my name is Marshini Chetty, and I'm an assistant professor here at the University of Chicago. I'm very glad that I was invited to participate in this panel, and that also I get to see Ellen again, because as she said, we're part of the Georgia Tech mafia. We seem to always be meeting up in different places. So I kind of overlap a little bit with Ellen. I work in the field of human-computer interaction. Other sort of keywords that talk about or relate to my research are ubiquitous computing, usable privacy and security, and also information and communication technologies for development. I sound like this because I'm from South Africa, and that's one of the many countries in Africa, right at the very bottom. And I did my undergrad at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. So much like UChicago, it has a lot of ivy on the buildings. And then I made the journey here to the US, where I came and met with Ellen when I was at Georgia Tech doing my PhD there. I was also faculty at the University of Maryland in the iSchool, where I see one of our students from Chaudhry he's here. And so I'm very glad to see him here. And then I was faculty at the Department of Computer Science in Princeton University. I also then moved here, so I've moved around a lot, much like Ellen, and I joined the supergroup here at the University of Chicago, and now I run my own group called the A Lab, which stands for the Amyoli Internet Research Group. So that kind of takes you through briefly my journey. So I was just going to give you a few examples of my project. I don't have any really cool videos with funky music like Ellen, but I was just going to give you some examples of the kinds of things that I work on. So essentially, most of my work is about making the internet more trustworthy for people. So I do this by making the internet more transparent, so giving people information about what's going on, to answer questions like, why, who's tracking me online? Why is my internet not secure? Am I getting the speed that I need? So I do a lot in privacy and security, as well as internet performance, and then even do some work in making data costs more transparent. So you might want to know, why am I always running out of data? Is it someone else in my household that's watching too many videos, or is it on Zoom too much, or is it something else? Most of my work has a policy impact. So I often work with regulatory bodies like the Federal Trade Commission to try to actually change legislation on things like, how high should data caps be, or how low should they be, or even things like, what kinds of speed advertisements should be allowed for consumers to understand what kind of internet speeds they need. So I was just going to give you some examples of how I actually make the internet more trustworthy. So most recently, I've been working on trying to help people understand misleading online content. So I wanted to give you an example of, I'm sure most of us have watched YouTube videos. Often we may not realize that YouTubers are actually trying to sell us products, and they engage in this process called affiliate marketing, where a brand like Amazon or so on pays them money to actually advertise about a particular product. So what we did was we built a browser extension called Ad Intuition, which basically flags when a YouTuber like this one, Elle of the Mills, is doing affiliate marketing. So our browser extension basically, pops out a little banner that says, this person's doing affiliate marketing, and it also highlights what we call the affiliate link. And that's how we actually detect whether someone's doing this. So this is basically something we're doing because there are many advertisements online, and particularly with influencers, it's hard to tell if they're advertising. And so for us, this is one way of making things more visible and transparent to the end user. So another thing that I've been working on most recently is we've been in this pandemic. That's why we're doing this remotely. And we've heard many crazy things, like perhaps, drinking bleach might actually help us cure coronavirus. And so what we're interested in finding out is, how do people deal with misinformation or misleading or potentially false information that they're receiving, for example, on social media platforms and other messaging platforms. And what we're doing is we've built this app called WhatsApp Extractor, where we're basically going to be collecting data. So WhatsApp is a messaging platform. It's used possibly a little bit less here in the US than in other countries. And we want to basically gather information from people who use WhatsApp using our Extractor app that will actually help us get an idea of the URLs that are being shared between people in these very private chats on this end-to-end encrypted platform. And we hope to get an idea of what kinds of misleading content, or at least URL links, are being shared. But we're also coupling this with an interview study to help us understand how do people process this information and what kinds of techniques would be useful to actually help people overcome or understand when something is potentially misleading online. So, this will help us to design things like, interventions to find out if things like labeling tweets is a good idea, or if removing videos or different kinds of interventions to get rid of misinformation is actually a good idea or not. I also work a lot with underserved and marginalized communities. So a second part of my research is very much about making the internet more inclusive to different kinds of populations. And I've worked particularly with kids. So we've designed a bunch of different games to help kids learn about privacy and security. This one here that I'm showing, Cybernaut, was based on the game Doodle Jump. And so we tested it out with 7 to 11-year-olds. They liked it, they thought it was fun, but they also said, it's not that great when you try to make a fun game educational. So we're still learning how to do this. But essentially, what we're trying to do here is we're finding that a lot of the resources to teach kids about privacy and security are directed towards middle and high schoolers. And that's equivalent to saying to someone, oh, why don't you learn how to swim, and throwing them into a shark-infested pool, right? Because by then they're already on social media, they're already doing lots of things. And now in the pandemic, they're online all the time. And so what we want to do is teach younger kids about privacy and security concepts, akin to sort of getting them used to the pool before there are any sharks in there, sort of getting comfortable and learning these concepts before they get to this later stage. And also when they're more amenable and more likely to listen to their parents and also teachers. So for this project, we have partner schools in Maryland and also in Chicago that we're working with to try to help them develop these educational resources for kids. Okay, so most of my work is, very much user-centered. So we use a lot of qualitative research to try to figure out what user needs are. We do a lot of design work. We implement solutions kind of like Cybernaut or WhatsApp extractor, sometimes to help us collect data, sometimes to put a particular concept in front of a user, much like some of Ellen's work. And then we obviously evaluate this to help us learn about the people. This is kind of how it is in practice. It's often a very messy process, but we try to do this and put the user in the center of everything that we do. So I wanted also just, to sort of get into the wrapping up part, say that since this was about the academic trajectory and career path, that I've shown you basically my front stage view, right? So this is like, great, here's my journey, here's my academic journey. It's pretty much like the front stage view that you would see if you looked and actually read my CV. But I also just wanted to say, there's a lot of stuff that happens backstage with me and also others when you're looking at their CV that you may not see. So for example, if you were to look at my CV and just pick out something random there and look at work experience, it looks very nice, like I've moved from this position to this position. What's not explicitly said there is, at some points I had 2 kids. This, at these times my productivity slumped a bit, but it's not something that's very explicit if you just look at someone's front stage view. Another thing that you may not see is that I moved a lot, and something that, again, wouldn't be reflected in my CV is that often I had to move and take different positions because of a 2-body problem, because my husband is also an academic. And so we had to find positions where we could both have jobs. And that's another reason why we moved here to U Chicago, aside from it being a great department and in a great city. And then finally, one of my colleagues who works with me on the Connecting Contexts, helping kids learn about privacy and security projects, she has this amazing thing called the CV of failures. So I encourage you to go look at her website, Jessica Vitak. Pramod knows her very well. Jessica has the CV of failures because other things that people don't put in their front stage view is actually all the things that they submitted that got rejected, and things that they tried to do and just sort of failed and so on. So again, similar to Jessica, although I don't have my own CV of failures to keep track of this, if you look at my CV, you won't see all the papers that I've had rejected, all the grants I've had rejected, all my moves, how I feel during the pandemic and so on. So I just wanted to say that, you know, an academic journey is something that's really nice to present to people, but there's a lot that I think hopefully we can discuss in this panel that you don't get to see from just reading someone's CV. And that's it. So hopefully that we're kept to time. I tried even without a video to keep to time, but that's me. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your incredible work with us, and definitely also for humanizing research in so many ways. This is a little shout out for an event that Professor Do is doing with the Atlas Institute. They're actually having an event right after this panel at 4 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be the Atlas Institute Research Showcase. Participants will have the opportunity to take a virtual open lab tour and learn about the Atlas Institute's inventive exploration and interdisciplinary research. And this is posted in our chat on Zoom, as well as our chat on YouTube. So please go check it out if you're interested. After those amazing talks, we're now going to be moving on to our discussion portion of the event. I'm going to do my best to facilitate this as much as possible, especially in reading the questions we already received. This means that if panelists also have questions for each other, please go ahead and ask them. Or if you have any questions for our audience as well, we want this to be as much of a discussion as possible, even though it is virtual. And people watching now on Zoom will have the option to unmute themselves if they have any questions. Yeah, I'm gonna go enable that right now. Awesome. So let's see. It looks like we already have some questions from our participants. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask the first one. This is from YouTube, from a user named ElectroStarter. This one is directed at Professor Ellen. It says, Ellen, this is super cool work. What do you recommend to someone who wants to get started with tangible interfaces? I see that the Mecha Magnets one is open source. Are there more toolkits like that? And what festivals should I keep an eye out for that?
Right, so Mecha Magnet is open source and we're working on the printed paper marker. So Beholder is also open source. I think we have a couple projects is also open source. So how do you start? I think come up with the project you want to do and then learn just in time to figure out what else can be done. Yes, open source is good. And then maybe also ask other people to help, because a lot of work we have is one person talking about something, another person talking about something. And so Clement was working on the 3D printing and he's just putting magnet, and then Peter is into game. And so the two of them say, oh, let's build this together. Yeah. Festival, good question. There are all kinds of festival, and there are also like Fab Learn and Makerspace. There are lots of community that I think you can just join and say, I want to build this. Can people help me? And I think people usually will say, oh, I can come up 3 other ways to do it.
Amazing, thank you so much. I think we have a participant that on Zoom who wants to participate. Would you like to unmute yourself? I think you should have the option now.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, brilliant. I have a question for Professor Do. Like, I read about your project using haptic gloves to help the user learn to play the music. It's like, I'm curious about the use of haptics. Is it just for the notification of like which finger the user should press down, or is it like there are more things that haptics can do? I have previously read papers about like hanger effects. That means by applying a certain kind of slight force on the fingers or other parts of the body, that can kind of guide the user into pointing their part of the body somewhere or turning it to a certain direction. I was wondering if like that might seem to be a feasible idea in terms of making the performance better.
All right, so hi.
Hi.
So for the mobile music touch, that one doesn't have anything else besides tapping your fingers. And we have another project called Tactile Teacher. So that one is monitoring and sensing which finger is moving. And then we're trying to do machine learning to figure out from the signal to figure out which finger is using. So those are two parts of the picture. And then for the mobile music touch, so it started with the students that Thad Stunner and I co-advised. And then afterwards, because I was moving around and Thad actually keep it going, there are a couple of different PhD students work on the project. The first one was learning to play music, become doing therapy, rehabilitation. And then there was another student doing the Braille learning, and now another student is doing like stroke rehab. So you are quite right there. We are just doing the tapping. We didn't do any other force, but we also do something else. So, and you can build any glove to do different things.
Thank you. And also talking about wearable haptic gloves, there's one thing I'm a little bit curious because, due to COVID-19, a lot of these wearable devices, the research revolving around them became sort of limited. Do you have any suggestions in terms of these specific research, how they should be conducted during this epidemic?
So I think there are three parts of your question, actually. One part is, so we are in COVID, so what do we do about conducting user experience or tests? And I think Marshini probably have similar experience, like, oh, maybe we send something to you and we are Zoom meeting, and so we're talking to you, watching how you do that instead of person to person. I think the second part is that if the glove, and I think this glove is not going to be moving between people, it's going to be my customized, my personal glove. So I'm not going to use that to touch other people, and maybe that's just for me at home, like my mask. I'm not sharing my mask. But third thing could be interesting to incorporate self-cleaning material, right? That material that could like self-disinfectant, so you don't have to worry about it. I'm not doing any of those, but I'm just saying the way you're thinking and asking questions, you actually come up with maybe multiple research direction you can do already. So that's fascinating.
Thank you so much for your insightful talk.
Amazing. So thank you so much for that
question.
We actually have another question from YouTube. This is from Ashlyn Sparrow, and it's for Professor Chetty. So the question is, I think you were probably more productive because you had 2 kids. How might our society respect the hard work of parents?
I actually, thank you, Ashlyn. It's nice to see you're lurking somewhere. But yeah, no, I actually do think I am more productive because I had kids. One thing I can say in terms of time management, at least from being a parent, is that before I had kids, I would my work-life balance wasn't so good, and my work would sort of like just bleed into my personal life all the time. When I had kids, at least pre-pandemic, I realized that I could only get work done when I had childcare. Previously, this was called school, which they could actually go to school. But when I had childcare and when they could actually go to school in person, it was very much like I had to have time bounds on when I could get work done, and that made me just very efficient in terms of like how I spend my time and what I spend my time on. So I had to cut out things like chatting and just, random things that take up time just so I can be very efficient. I think in terms of like, how do we respect the needs of parents? I think it's not just the needs of parents, but just pretty much, I think anyone who needs a work-life balance, that we need to be very mindful of boundaries and like make sure that we're communicating to students and just people we're working with that it's okay to have those boundaries. So in the pandemic, whether you're a parent with kids or just someone who just really needs downtime or just needs a break from the screen because we're on the screen all the time, I think that we need to be very clear and upfront about those boundaries for us and say, hey, I'm not going to work on the weekend, for example, because, I want to spend time with my kids, or I need a break so that I'm refreshed when I get back. So I think regardless of whether you're a parent or not, it's just about setting those boundaries and sticking to them so that you can have that work-life balance.
Thank you so much. We have another live participant on Zoom who has a question. I think you can go ahead and mute yourself.
Is it me?
Yep, it's you.
Okay. So yeah, thank you both of the speakers. Your talks were amazing. I'm very amazed by the projects you're doing. And the way you presented your talk was also pretty good. So I have a question for Ellen, because especially on the piano music, the haptic learning for the piano. So I was also working on a similar project in which we are trying to, do a haptic learning for dances, so how you can learn dances from a haptic wearable. So most of the time, my question was like how we can validate the system effectiveness, like how we can tell like this system is more effective than learning in a conventional manner. That's something like that is still challenging to me, and I'm still mentoring that project. And yeah, I would love some insights.
That's a very good question. So I think there are different type of tools, and I like this paper from Kumio Nakakochi. She talked about creativity support tools. And so if there are three type of tools. The first type is dumbbell. So you know this dumbbell, you're exercising, you're training your muscle. So you can measure before and after you use the tool, right? Do I have more strength? Okay. The second type is running shoes. So you can run already, but running shoes make it more comfortable, maybe even run faster. So both of them, you can measure how fast, how better they are. But the third type is ski. Before people invented ski, they don't know how to use ski, and ski is a new entertainment or new things, right? So when you first come out, you don't know how to evaluate that. But once it's getting established, then people say, oh, maybe ski, they could be different shape, they could be faster, they'll be safer. So I think when you're doing something that's new, it may be hard to evaluate. And so maybe the part is not, it's not really evaluation, it's probably like validation, like, oh, here's an episode, here's a case study, and maybe this is more like a primary research, you're getting feedback directly from the user, and you're not claiming that this is going to be used for everybody, but being able to say, hey, here's user one, user two, different persona, different tasks, and they seem to like be happy about that. So because I think we're doing NetCHI, we're talking about the N, 5, 10, 15, that's already a lot of time. We're not going to get 500 or 5,000 to say this is like an FDA trial that you're going to be commercial product. So yes, I hear you. And I've been dodging the bullet, so I'm doing the smaller one.
Thank you so much. That was helpful.
Amazing. So we have more questions. This one is for Professor Chetty, but I think we can expand it. This one is especially giving you a shout out for giving that reality check on academia. But for both of you, can you speak more about your trajectory? Why did you not go into the industry? Why academia? Why not work for another company that, you know, can, where you could work on the same tools?
Great. Yeah, I guess we can both answer this. Me personally, so I guess I started doing undergrad as I started doing research as an undergrad, and I guess I didn't really have anyone in HCI at the institution I was at least at the undergrad level. But then when I started getting into my master's, there was a really great professor and mentor that got me into HCI. And so I just really liked it, and I decided that I liked research. And then it came time to graduate, and I was like, I don't know what to do. So I was like, maybe I'll do a master's, and I kind of just fell into that. And then I really wanted to travel, so I thought doing a PhD overseas would be a good way to do that. And I sort of just fell into that. I still didn't have like an end goal in mind here, which is kind of weird to say. But then when I started my PhD at Georgia Tech, that's when I first thought, hey, being a professor seems really cool. I think I want to be a professor, but I'm not really sure. And what I did was I used the times for summer to do internships at different companies. So I interned at Microsoft Research, at IBM. Microsoft Research I really liked, so I interned there 3 different times in 3 different locations. But it was really nice to get to see what a company environment is like for research. And that's kind of when I really realized that I liked academia. I liked the flexibility of academia. I liked working with students. I just liked that my day, wasn't just sort of a 9 to 5 or like constrained in different ways that it was in industry. Although I really liked working at the places that I worked. And that's what sort of kept me in academia. And just that same belief that, being a professor is kind of cool. I said, okay, this is what I'm going to go for, because I really like working with students. I like being able to set my own research agenda, and just the flexibility that I have, which is also really useful for whatever personal pursuits you have, whether that's kids or anything else. I just find that that's just really rewarding for me. And so that's kind of why I decided to stay in academia. And so I'll turn it over to Ellen.
Yeah, so my story is somehow different and similar at the same time. So I was trained as an architect, and I actually work for architect's office, deal with client, and the certain things that I like, certain things I don't like. Managing construction worker and going out to drink with clients, I just like, okay, I don't particularly like this part. And then I think, so I went to Harvard for my master's degree, and when I graduated and I looked for a job, and that time I haven't quite decided I'm going for a Ph.D. So I just sent all the application and I got 3 offers. So one is working in the architect's office, and one is like in an AI company, and one is, that's not really a job. Basically the school say that the computer resources say, hey, Ellen, if you want to hang out, you can hang out in our computer resource department. So I decided to do that. I think it's a lot more fun to hang out with the professor and the colleague at the university. At that time, I just said, I don't imagine myself programming all day long. And I don't imagine myself like doing CAD all day long. And so in a way I said, oh, delaying the decision by hanging out. But that year, I learned every single computer aided design software, and I put out my proposal to go for PhD. And that's how I got into Georgia Tech, first as a PhD student, and 10 years later become a professor. And then I think the nice thing is that I always been, so I spent time in Singapore, and then I actually work with a lot of industry. I obtained different industry sponsored projects, and many of my former students are working in the industry. So I feel like I'm getting that benefit as vicariously through them. From time to time, there may be companies say, hey, you want to come over here for some time? And I say, oh, yeah, probably think about it as a sabbatical. So I would go there and hang out instead of totally leave, because I think one of the things I really like is I like being a professor, because I realize that my job is like getting people to see the possibility and for their lights to shine in and light up, say, I can do this. And that part excites me. So that's why I'm still a professor.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Academia can seem so straightforward, but the path to it can be so different. We have another question. 1 second. Sorry. So both of your work focuses on studying and creating different systems in creative ways. What do you envision to be the future of HCI? And how do you see the principles of your work being integrated into other fields?
Wow, that's tough. Ellen, are you going to take that first?
Okay, I will take the bullet. Where the future will be. So I like to quote, I think Alan Kay was being asked like what the future will be. And he said, well, the best way to predict the future is by inventing it. So if you have something you imagine what the future will be, you should be like, let's invent that. What can I predict? I don't know. I think there will be devices everywhere, right? Then even part of your skin or part of your body, and there will be interaction. And I think human is still very important. We will never want other things, whether it's technology or robot, to take over. And don't worry, I don't think they will be take over anytime soon, because we are in there. We're trying to help people understand. And I love Marshini's example, like, oh, the kids, well, maybe they don't want to learn about it, but then in the process of doing something, they realize that you're doing something may not be safe. So all the kids may be playing game in the shopping mall, and they are tapping into other people's Wi-Fi, and they're using their parents' computers. So they could have people hacking it. So that's that. And how do I see what I do integrate to other parts or other domain or other industry? And I think the type of work I do, I say it's sketching, because I think it's prototyping, even suggesting an alternative, right? And then they are not just for HCI, even though HCI as a domain, and some of them become object for people to argue or discuss. Like, oh, do I really want to change the flavor? Then should we be talking about food industry, or should I be talking about game? And I think I'm not giving you an answer. I'm just saying that I like the part that I'm working with students. We're thinking about project and object, but that is the beginning of discussion or even some kind of context that people can challenge. Okay, give it back to Marshini.
Thanks, Ellen. That gave me time to think. But yeah, no. So I was going to say pretty much similar to Ellen. Like although my work is, also creating new technologies and so on, I think, what I've learned is that technology is often not the solution, and it's more about the people, right? And so whatever we're doing, we're always trying to learn what will help people, because technology just amplifies what's already there. Like even with the misinformation project, it's hard to just solve and say like, okay, we're going to stop people from believing that they should drink bleach or whatever else it is, right? It's not that easy. And so I guess a lot of the stuff that I do is about learning how to help integrate technology into people's lives in a way that sort of amplifies hopefully the positive things and sort of diminishes the negative things, although we don't always get that right. And in terms of like, how do I see the stuff that I do integrating into, other domains and so on and spreading, like Ellen, I also sometimes work with industry partners. So even with the work with kids, we worked a lot with the team, or at least, had interactions with the team on Google, who does Be Internet Awesome. So we try to like make sure that the ideas and the things that we come up with can actually get to people who are creating products that are affecting many more people that maybe I would see as an academic. And so, that's kind of how I try to influence things. And I also mentioned policy-wise, I try to use my work as evidence to help influence policies that I think can impact a lot of people. And so, yeah, and so that's the kind of way that I try to have impact. But yeah, I think it all boils down to people. At the end of the day, the H in human-computer interaction, is most important.
Amazing, thank you. So I feel like a part of working on so many different teams and with so many labs and groups of people, you might come into encounters in which people empower, question, or undermine your work. Have you had those encounters? How do you navigate them? And what kind of recommendations would you have for others who might encounter similar situations?
I guess, Ellen, do you want to take it? Okay, I'll take a stab at it. Yes, I have definitely encountered being in a situation where my work was not valued and sort of undermined, and people didn't understand the value of HCI to begin with. And that was very difficult because it kind of creates this friction for everything you're doing. You have to sort of really motivate yourself. You always feel like you're sort of working against a barrier, but at the same time, you just have to be strong and sort of believe in yourself, because if you don't, like no one else is going to be able to do that. So despite whatever friction and barriers you're facing, you have to just say like, I believe my work, whether it's reviewer 2 who's rejecting your work, or whether it's like someone in your department that's, just like, oh, I don't see what the point of what you're doing is, or, geez, what is HCI? You kind of have to just, if you're passionate about it and you're still like, no, I like what I do and I feel like it's important, you kind of have to be that strong, right? And that's the way that I found and being able to overcome times when I felt like, my work wasn't being appreciated, or just being in an environment I didn't feel was supported. So it wasn't easy. I don't say that it's easy. It's pretty hard. But, I think if you can develop a thick outer skin and realize that many things that you might take personally, like one rejection here or there, or someone, comment someone made, it may not be, it may be magnified for you, right? And so I think you just have to take it in your stride and just try to press on. At least that's what I've been doing. Ellen.
Yes, I would agree with that. So for example, when I first started doing my PhD, I was thinking about, I want a computer to understand my sketching. Everybody say, that's not possible. Go take like 5 years of computer graphic recognitions and everybody draw differently. And I was like, huh, what? Okay, so then I do a survey with 62 architects and I have this diagram, ask them to draw, diagram, ask them to interpret, they give them the text and ask them to draw, and then got 3 other people to do iterator, reliability, coding side. Here is a similar diagram, here's the other thing, and then I present it. Everybody say, oh, of course, we got a similar education system. I said, wait, that's not what you said several months ago. So that was my first encounter, like people tell you, man, don't do it. And then I believe in it, I did it. When I come back, everybody just celebrate. Nobody remembered they told me not to do it. And then I think, so to combat the reviewer comment, that's a little harder because you don't know who you're talking to. But by looking at their comments, sometimes you can realize where do they come from. And so I think several conferences have rebuttal, so you could be able to try to find out put yourself in their shoes, say, why are they saying that? And so you acknowledge that and then say, this is how I'm addressing that. And so when person in person, I have this framework that I found it very useful. So one is when two persons get into conflict, and they could be in the 4 different quadrants. One is getting it right, one is getting it done, one is getting appreciated, and one is getting along, right? And so when you are in different quadrants, then you are having a fight. And so one time we were in a faculty meeting, and we cannot end, and people just keep on talking, and something really important about curriculum, other thing. And then I started using this lens. I realized that person just want to get it done. That person want to get it right. That person want to get along, so everything's okay. The other person want to be appreciated. And then, so I started to say, appreciate them, and then say, that's good. And so I acknowledge everybody. And then suddenly we were able to come to a conversion of something we agree on. And so I think having the lens, being able to see you and another person, even though when they put it down, they may not be intentionally, maybe they have something else they want to do. So they don't think what you're doing is useful or interesting, and being able to switch your perspective and get them to recognize what you do will be useful. And tell your story.
Thank you so much. So you also both identify and address existing systems to help and empower people through a variety of different tools. On that line of thinking, what are the most critical changes that we as a society must make to face the future and all of its challenges effectively? It's a pretty big question.
I think, okay, I'll just say one thing and then hopefully Ellen will fill in the gaps. So I'm going to give Ellen time to think to fill in this gaps. But I guess what I've learned, and also just listening to what Ellen was saying, I think although I said like be strong when you're facing adverse circumstances, I think what Ellen said is really good, which is even though you may be hearing criticism and things like that, sometimes you need to hear it. And sometimes you do need to say, here, I can see where this person's coming from. And often that can also help you grow, even if it's something that, is causing friction, right? So I think in terms of like, how do we have to address the situation we're in now? I think the main thing is we have to try to be resilient. My niece wrote this amazing story when she was in like, I don't know, 3rd or 4th grade, about this tree that was a bending tree, right? So she was writing about this tree that had the strong wind sort of blowing against it. And the reason it was able to survive is because, and not break, was because it bent and sort of flowed with the wind. And I would say that, you've got to be a bending tree, basically, right? We're getting a lot of stuff thrown at us. We're remote. We're having, lots of different things happening depending on the country you're in, the place you're in. And so I think as much as you can, if you can do things that set your boundaries, that refresh you and allow you to become resilient, that's how all of us can get through this together. And so, yeah, I guess Ria, my niece, would love that I'm saying this, but I would say, yeah, be a bending tree, and hopefully that will help everyone.
Well, I think the question is important, that there's so much going on, so I'm not exactly know where to address, but being able to have an open mind, being able to see in different people's perspective, being able to be civilized in discussion, and being able to acknowledge like, hey, there could be things that we have done wrong, or people have done wrong, or make a mistake. I think there was a joke said, to err is human, and take a computer to really fuck it up, sorry. So the idea is that computer can really screw things out, but then I think people should understand there's a mistake. And of course, we should pay attention about how you program or how you make the artifact the way of the society or the community in your own image. And I think that's the part that sometimes people get into conflict because they are so sure about they are right. So being able to open for discussion, for listening, and willing to admit that you're not always right or you're not always the best, being able to take different opportunities, that'll be really interesting. And coming back to how technology can shape our society, and I think that's a very important issue, right? So we're talking about image recognition, so we can recognize different color, skin tone. So why are we doing that? So can we do something different? Can we do something in reverse? Can we do something that is, if it's co-design, when everybody's throwing their 2 cents, and maybe we have $100 million coming out from everybody 2 cents. So that's what I would say.
Amazing. Thank you so much. In a similar line of thinking, both of your works are very impressive and inspiring, from visualizing new haptic devices that don't exist yet, or working with communities where systems have not previously existed of the sort. How do you start projects that seem too ambitious, and how do you deal with moments of self-doubt?
Ellen.
So I have this trick dealing with self-doubt, right? People talking about the imposter syndrome, right? Fake it until you make it. And I think there's pretty good things about that, right? So if you are really doubting yourself, and I think I learned a couple of things, like meditate, having time out, like I couldn't deal with it, or being able to self-hug, like tell yourself, I appreciate you, I love you, I know you're very variable. Okay, everything is gonna be okay, everything is gonna be okay. And then I think the part when people talking about presentation, the fact that if you show up and know the environment, you will feel comfortable. Or if you change your posture, moving, stretching, you're gonna feel much better, right? So when you have self-doubt and say, I think I'm in a self-abusing, indulging, whatever mode, and say, no, I decided I want to be happy, and then think your happy thought and change your posture. I think that would change your mood right away. And so sometimes I think we all have doubt, like, am I better? Am I good enough to do this and that? And yeah, me too. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm just an imposter. I'm not doing anything that's for real. Yeah. So, but then I think that's part of being human. We are vulnerable, and we understand that there are weakness and strengths. And so accentuate the strengths and then figure out how to improve on the weakness. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love what Ellen was saying. I would just say, like, in terms of like dealing with self-doubt, definitely things that personally I found helpful is having a strong supportive network, like in terms of like family support or friends, people you can talk to. Sometimes even if you have to talk to a therapist, if, you know, like these things help, because, you know, having someone to talk to is really important. I like what Ellen said about being prepared. So for example, if you're giving a presentation or something you're not comfortable with, you know, being prepared will help to reduce any anxiety you have. And then also, like Ellen said, it could be your posture. It could be maybe you have a theme song that you want to play, you know, like whatever it is that gets you revved up. That's like, yeah, I've got this. You know, kind of do whatever works for you. But like Ellen said, everyone has moments of self-doubt. We all have had some point where we've like had imposter syndrome and so on. And I think it's just, you know, other things that you can do is try not to compare yourself to other people, right? Everyone is on their own journey. Everyone has different ways to get, you know, along their path. And so these kinds of things can also sort of limit that feeling of, oh, I'm not like so-and-so, or I'm not good enough, right? Try to focus on what you've done. I know a faculty member once told me that she had a folder on her desktop called Kudos. And so she used to like keep like any email or anything that people sent her that was like, oh, well done, or something like that. So another thing you can do is, you know, remind yourself of the things that you have gotten right, that you have actually succeeded with. And then just in terms of like ambitious projects and also working with, say, underserved or marginalized communities, it can be tough. It's not the easiest work. I mean, I've also done a lot of work, say in South Africa. And yes, you know, you do have to work a lot harder to kind of get involved in communities and so on. But if you find a strong champion that you can work with, that usually helps. And also, it's like with anything, like Ellen said, like now, you know, even just to run a user study, you've got to mail someone something to perhaps test out and so on. With anything, I think if you think creatively, you can always find a way. And, you know, I think you can also learn, like if you have a plan and something's too ambitious, then you kind of learn over time, like what you can kind of manage or handle. And I use that as like a way to say, okay, is this something too much? You know, is this project like too much, too soon, or so on? And then I just try to adjust, right? But not everyone gets it right all the time. Like Ellen said, we all make mistakes, and then you kind of learn from those mistakes. And sometimes failures help you learn even more than successes, because then you're like, okay, I know what I did wrong. Well, I know, you know, here are some things I can kind of improve upon.
Thank you so much for all of that wonderful personal advice. So to wrap up our Q&A discussion, I have one more question for you. And it is just, could you share one piece of practical advice you would give to someone just starting out in academia?
Don't be afraid of failure. Just try it and read a lot.
Yeah, I'd say what Ellen said, which is like sometimes failing or not succeeding at something can actually help you learn a lot more than just succeeding at it the first time. And I'd just say, like I said, just remember, not just with academia, but with everything, everyone has a front stage, right? And so often like you can feel like you're just seeing that, and that can lead to feelings of like imposter syndrome, or, oh, that person has it right together or whatever, but you never see the backstage. Everyone always has some backstage and some stuff that's going on, right? And so I would just say, you know, try to be mindful of that. Know that, you know, if you need help or things like that, you can always reach out to other people. And like Ellen said, don't be afraid of failing or feeling like you're struggling at any point. Like just reach out and try to, you know, build up those other things that can help you be a bending tree, like a strong supportive network, people to talk to and things like that. And have a work-life balance if you can. That would definitely help.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm not going to keep us much longer because the research showcase is starting now, and we hit our 1 hour mark. So to all our viewers right now, thank you so much for joining us and being here with us. I'm going to quickly share my screen to do a recap of our event, and also maybe share some statistics with you and go over our past panels. Okay, cool. So again, today we were joined by Professor Yi-Luen and Professor Marshini Chetty. Thank you so much for that. It was amazing. As for statistics, over the course of 4 days, we were joined by 10 amazing panelists. We had over 99 views on Zoom and over 136 unique views on YouTube. And there's still way more and more as people are able to rewatch the videos. Yes, if you do want to watch any of the panels that you didn't have a chance to see, they will all be available on the Human-Computer Integration YouTube page and a playlist. And just to recap all of the amazing people we were joined by for our opening plenary, we were joined by Ari Melenciano, Jingyi Li, Constanza Pina Pardo, and Gabriela Johnson. For our Wednesday industry panel, we were joined by Felipa Macabore and Elizabeth Kapruki. For our art panel yesterday on Thursday, we were joined by Ashlyn Sparrow and Snowshoe. And for today, as I already said, we were joined by Professor Yi-Luen and Professor Marshini Chetty. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen sharing now. Yes, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for organizing. Bye, Ellen. Thank you.